Welcome to In Cool of the Day and today's segment, Keeping It Real with Donna and David Burks. Today's show will be in honor of David's father and my father-in-law, Glenn Burks, who went home to be with the Lord 2 weeks ago. We will share some very personal moments and an awesome revelation that Glenn left us with in his last days as he purposed to give God the glory. We will start out with the highlights of the last month, what God has been showing Glenn for the last 6 to 8 months, and the impression he made on all who came in contact with him in the last few days. Following that, David will share how this has impacted him and how it can benefit you. So if you're ready, let's get started. Okay, so I want to give you a little bit of a history of what's happened over the last few days, the last few months. So in July, we found out that David's father had stage 4 cancer. It was pretty quick from that time going forward as far as to his passing. So around the middle of July we found out, and then he passed 2 weeks ago, wasn't it, David?
Yes.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago. But in all of that, it was an awesome experience in some ways. David was going to share some of that. It's still very personal to him, but he's going to try to get through it and share it with you guys as far as what he saw and what his father left as a testimony. Going through the hospital, witnessing the nurses, praying, seeing the glory on the other side, which in a sense it gave us peace that he is in a better place. But also towards the end of that, we were preparing for his celebration of life. And the pastor had asked if we had any information from when Glenn was little, so he could, share a little bit about his story. Well, his mom had remembered a letter that he had wrote back in January. He was preparing for a Wednesday night service because sometimes he gave the message. He used to be a pastor and he used to travel doing mission trips overseas. So he had a very close relationship with the Lord. And he was preparing for this message when the Lord started giving him revelation. And it's through that revelation that I feel that he's still able to leave a testimony and he's still ministering to people even after his passing. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to kind of go through pieces of the letter and we're going to stop and talk about that. And then David's going to be able to share a little bit more with that. Okay? So basically in the letter, again, he's talking about going back when he was a child and they were very poor. He didn't like going to school. He liked being outside, running around, having his feet in the mud. He liked the sound of it when you pulled your feet out of the mud. And he also talked about how hard it was to sit in a classroom knowing that he would rather be outside. So this went on until he's about 13, and finally he told his father, he's like, no, he fussed with him until his dad finally agreed to let him quit school. And then he began working in the cotton fields. And he worked there for many years, but he said that the one thing he learned about working in those cotton fields was that how to complete a task. You stayed at it until you completed it. And then from there he went on to do multiple jobs. Okay, over time until he met David's mother, Shelby. And once he met her, and eventually he started going to church and he got saved. So the one thing that I did want to hit on that is through all that time, the one thing that he said that he lacked was love and affection. So they were, they were very happy people, hardworking people, the whole community, but he lacked that love and affection growing up because that wasn't really shown to a child. And so this is where I want to start a little piece of the letter. He talked about, my life had a large void in it, not to mention the shame I felt due to not having a formal education. Early on, alcohol provided a means of recreation. I was drawn into this lifestyle very easily because of my peers embracing the drinking way of life. So he goes through and he kept going from pay period to pay period. He would run up a bill and pay it off. All right. So he realized that he was really a young man that was trapped in a lifestyle that was really going nowhere. But this is where I want to start about the tale of a horse. And this is where he said that God had showed him a revelation. So this week, when preparing for a message for the Wednesday night crowd, the Lord began speaking to my heart. You need to remember the little boy who is in need of affection. He struggled, in a sense, to see God, to see what he was saying through all these visions that he had been having over time. And this particular one he saw a most beautiful flower. It was white, red, deep downward flower with silver edges along the petal. It was wonderful. It was hanging in the air. It was suspended. He said it was the most beautiful thing that he had ever seen. What the Lord showed him, he said, this is how I've chosen to give my affection and love to you. So he was giving that vision to Glenn to be able to let him know that he loved him no matter what. And he said, word cannot express the love and warmth that I felt when the meaning was shown to me. What an awesome God. At this point, I think I want to stop because we're going to go to David and let David kind of share as far as what people were saying about Glenn, about the love that he showed people and the time and the effort that he took with him, and some of his memories as far as what he was sharing in the hospital, because his way of showing love was, he prayed for you, like we praying for the pastor. So go ahead, David.
Yeah, he was at a Catholic hospital, and when the nurses come in, the sisters would come in, and he wouldn't even wait for them to pray for them. He wanted to pray for the sisters.
And we may have to take a couple moments here because, as we said, this is still pretty fresh for David.
So he just liked to make sure that everybody knew that he knew God, and he wanted them to have a relationship with God himself. So he was just praying for everybody, and everybody that came in, and all the nurses. He just prayed for them. Actually, sometimes he would be singing to them because he was in that spirit of what God showed him. And so he was just preparing himself to be the man that he really wanted to be. When because he over the years he wanted to be a man that would be of God, and a man that would just be happy with everybody and show love to everybody. And that was a pretty different situation because growing up he wasn't really that type of person, and at the end I knew a different man than I grew up with.
So even so, he accepted the Lord when he was in his probably 20s at that point, I would think, 20s or 30s.
Yeah, late 20s, yeah.
It was still that the Lord was doing a work on him, and he still wasn't able to share that happiness or that love until later on as the Lord continued.
No, he was a
hard
hard-working man. I mean, he worked 12 hours a day at a body shop. Then he'd come home and work another 4 or 5 hours working on cars just to pay the bills for the house. So he was a very hard-working person. From when he was a child to now. I mean, he even in his retirement stage, he was always doing something, always going on mission trips, always trying to help somebody.
And that's kind of what we want to bring out today is, one, how the Lord can transform your life, because as he says here, and I do want to get to the part about the wild stallion, because that's, I think, is very good, the way that he phrased that about how the Lord took him as a wild stallion and had to tame him. But two, it's a continuous work in your life.
Yes, it is.
But, and the important thing is, too, that you want to still make sure that those people in your life are aware of how you feel and how you love them and you're proud of them, and you want to share that with people. You don't want to wait until you're dying or you're on your deathbed, as many people do, to make amends.
Yeah, we had I was having a conversation with my daughter there in the house, and I was talking about how my dad, has transformed into a wonderful man, and that everybody that was involved and all his church people, they just loved that man. That was the common answer to people saying, we just love that man. And I'm just thinking to myself, I want to be that man also for everybody.
Yeah. And the thing that he did is, when he went into the hospital, he told his pastor when he went to the emergency room that God will get the glory. And he had shared that there was peace in his pain. And as he was going through those last days before he went into his deep sleep, you got to witness him celebrating and going to the other side. So can you share a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, it was amazing. everybody to be leaving about 5 o'clock or so because they'd been there all day and they wanted to go home and get a bite to eat. So they'd leave, and that was my time to be really with him and just talk to him and tell him about, you know,
talking about the Lord and,
yeah,
and you
how
were
much
playing
I loved him, and talking about the Lord and talking about the situations that he's in, and you know, then I put some Christian music on, and he wasn't getting any peace or sleep. But as soon as first night when I put the Christian music on, it just put him at ease, and he was just in such glory. It was amazing. You could just see him, and you know, one night he was just raising his hands up, you know, ooh, Lord, you know, you don't, you just don't know, and he was looking over to the right there, and it's just like he was saying, "Oh, Jesus," you know. So I believe he was seeing Jesus, and he was seeing things from the other side. The Lord was letting him see, and he was just in glory, you know, just almost. I thought he was going to jump out of the bed, and he was so happy. I mean, he's smiled ear to ear, and it was
he
just
was telling you, right?
Yeah, he was telling me that God was showing him some things, you know, about the waterfalls and the endless things that he was saying during the conversation, and it was just amazing that God allowed me to be there to see what can happen at the particular part when God calls you to be with Him, and it was just amazing to see all that. And I mean, not that I really would like for him to be here, but you know, he said that God gave him the power of life and death. So, you know, but he saw the other side, and he said that party was too good.
And he said that when God told him that when he chose, then he was out of here.
He was out of here.
And so we know that's the one thing that gives us comfort, is that we know he chose to go.
Oh, yeah.
That he was ready to get her out of the pain, which I think that gives hope. You know, to our audience as well, to say if you have anybody that is going through the suffering and maybe they're in hospice at this point and the time is getting short, it's important to understand where they're at, and if they have peace with that, just as my dad that passed last year. And I was able to pray with him, and he had peace. But you know, we miss them, so we grieve, but we know they're in a better place, and that they will see that glory.
Yeah, I was reading a little article in one of the books that my dad had there, and he said, you're just on this earth for just one moment compared to eternity.
Yep.
And I'm just, the audience, you know, you really need to understand your family. Whatever differences you have, you need to make them mend, because family is very important.
Yeah, I will say that one thing that we all said when we were down there was, we have to start making more family time.
Yeah.
Right? So we all get busy with work and life and kids, and you're going to get me going here in a minute. But what is important, family, is that you need to reach out, you need to make amends, you need to take that time. You know, we have kids and they're all grown, but they're all over the place right now, right? They have their own schedules and their different work hours, and it makes it very tough for the days that they have off, because some aren't off on the weekend, they're off during the week. And so, but we said, regardless, you know, at least once a month. That doesn't sound like a lot, but but that's kind of trying, just doing that. But we have to get together, and we have to make that time, and we have to enjoy each other, because you really don't know how much time you do have.
Yeah, it was amazing being there in the hospital. I know my dad's told me plenty of times in further years that he was really proud of me from where I've been to where I am. And he was telling me that again there. He says, son, we almost lost you. And I go, well, what do you mean? Well, you know, when you were young, you did a lot of things. I said, yeah, that's true, you know. But, you know, the older you get, the more important things get to you. And, you know, that crazy lifestyle doesn't exist anymore. So it's more, you know, God showing you the right steps to be. You know, it's in God's timing all the time about everything, but especially, you know, individuals, especially myself. You know, and I did a lot of things when I was younger, but you know, my mom's always prayed for me to come back and be the young man that I needed to be. And
it's your priorities change too as you get older. I mean, so that's the thing. The Lord helps to help change your priorities. You start to understand sometimes what's more important, right? The things, it's not about always chasing things. It's about, because like I told like I shared with CJ, you come into the world, who's around you? Your family,
Yeah.
right? When you usually go out of this world, it's your family that's around you.
Right.
You know, in between, you may have differences, but that's what's really important when it comes down to it. And so, do you want me to go ahead and read the part about the stallion?
Sure.
Okay. All right, so let's see how we're doing here. Basically, so I'm going to start, guys. This is about a page, so hopefully I can get through all of this here with time. God told me that I was a young wild stallion. Most people automatically visualize a horse in the natural wild, roaming free with any restraints and full of energy with no master. Reflecting back on my past, the truth of this analogy of me being a wild stallion just seemed to jump out at me. The Lord said, I could not use you unless your wild spirit was broken. In only a few minutes, the Lord put the pieces of the puzzle in order for me to see how He had been working in my life over many years. You need to understand that my spiritual journey has been a wonderful experience, and this was the icing on the cake. So over the years, I've been unable to receive all the love and affection the Lord desired to pour out on my life. The Lord seemed to open up my very soul and pour into my being all that love over the years that I have been unable to receive and to process. He felt like a spiritual tsunami had hit him, basically. God was in control. He's tossing him all around. His eyes filled with tears. His heart was exalted, but his voice would break down as he was carried along this spiritual tide. So he said the Lord and the wranglers were out in the wild looking for some wild horses. Wranglers have a good eye for qualities in horses, but he was out in the wild with mud all over his coat from years of wallowing in the mud, which we do that, right? When we just,
Oh, yeah.
when we're straying down those roads. Stains and thorns were in my body, which upon close inspection would reveal infections. I was probably the worst looking of all the wild stallions. Other stallions were quickly pointed out to the Lord as having a lot of potential. And some of you guys may feel that way. You may feel like you don't have a lot of potential, but you do, right? You have unlimited potential in the Lord. However, the Lord looked at the muddy looking mess, that being me, and said, I see something in Glenn that appeals to me. So the wranglers rounded me up, meaning he accepted the Lord in his heart, and the wild stallion was moved into the master's corral. He would go out in the morning to give the horse a sugar cube to win his favor. Then he began to remove the thorns and put medication on the infection. Spiritual growth can at times be painful, but the Lord is always caring for his own, and eventually he will remove all the thorns in life that cause you pain and infection. But it is a work in progress. The master has a way of brushing the horses which brings much comfort. Many horses have never experienced the love of God as he gently brushes their coats. Eventually, after much gentle care, the master can use the tame horses to till the soil of the world. The Lord and I have tilled soil all over the world. Now I am an old horse and unable to plow the fields. I hang around the barn most of the days. More sugar cubes seem to come my way today. Oats have fattened my old body. The master checks on me every day. There are some days he will come out of the ranch house and tell the wranglers to get the surrey ready. Many times the wranglers go to get the thoroughbred for the trip. The Lord says, no, get old Glenn, because the two of us have traveled many miles together. We go out and minister to someone. There are the other days when the master and I will travel out to get some fresh spring water and enjoy his creation. I had a further revelation from the Lord this morning, which was back in January. Most of my Christian walk has been disjointed. Not so much in a bad way, but something seemed to be missing, and he couldn't put his finger on it. I've had an awesome Christian walk over the years. The Lord took all the fragments, laid out the puzzle before me, and had every piece of the puzzle in place. That was it. There was my life right before me. All of God's personal, intimate love saturated my life over the years. I could see how God had bathed me in his life. I had never realized the extent of God's involvement in my life until now. This realization brought a spiritual tsunami which consumed my being. Unable to speak clearly because of the tears and the crying, I never felt so loved in all my life. Some, if not most, experiences pass away with time, but not this one. This has changed my life forever in a most wonderful spiritual way. The Lord has promised me that one day soon he will take me on a trip to a new home. The green grass is chest deep, not to mention. I will get a new body that I can run and jump like a young colt. My master and I will be together for eternity. And until then, I find comfort in being with the master and waiting on that next sugar cube. So that was what God had showed him in late January. And there was other revelations that kept coming, because the pastor mentioned that he would call the assistant pastor and go, hey, guess what God just showed me? And then he wanted to share it with the senior pastor. And that one time he said, no, senior pastor's on vacation. He goes, I don't care. Give me a cell phone number, right?
Give me your cell phone.
He has to hear about this. So even to the end, he just really wanted to share God. I mean, even in the hospital, the pastor said after he prayed for Glenn, that Glenn said, no, you come back here. I need to pray for you.
Yeah,
right?
He's praying for everybody.
The nurses, they loved him.
Oh.
He was only up there, what, 3 or 4 days?
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 or 4 days, and they all came and said their wishes to him at the funeral home, and it was amazing that the nurses would do that. But you see how he put something on them, in their spirit, to see how fantastic of a man that he was and how happy he was. So he was very happy. God showed him the right place that he needed to be, and he definitely was there.
So what's helped you through this period?
Just really knowing the Lord and how great he is, and the things that he shows you, and it just changes your view on life itself. It's life is not about you, it's about other people, and it's about helping them and just showing them what God has done for you. And he's been miracles for me, and it's just amazing to understand what my dad has said all along. It's the walk with God, and that's the really thing that I've been thinking about lately. And so it was a wonderful experience, and I thank God for the experience, because it's been able to be there is one thing, and then to actually absorb everything that God was showing him, and how wonderful he is. It's just amazing. That
there is pain in the peace, and there's peace in dying even. As you're going through. So, and the nice thing is too, well, not the nice thing, but it's kind of exciting to think about what's in store for your mom, because even though she's grieving right now, we know that there's things that God may still, that he still wants her to do.
Oh yeah, God's put peace at my mom. She's been preparing this whole time for it anyway, of reading the Bible every day, going on mission trips and everything. God's been preparing her for the mission that he has for her now, not having my dad with her. So, God will give her favor for sure, because she's been a faithful servant to God and a faithful servant to my dad.
50 years.
50 years it would be.
Years. Yep. That's really losing your best friend, 50 years. And I know she mentioned that God had put on her heart to write the book, and she's been journaling every day over the years for all of the things that they've done. So now it's time for her to get back on that book and start typing up her journals as she was doing.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that you learn about your parents at the later part of life that you never knew. I mean, there's a lot of things that I found out about my dad that I didn't know. And it was amazing.
That's the other thing that I think that's important for our audience to understand, is, again, a lot of times we get together and we have that social talk, right? We have the surface talk. We don't have those deep talks. And it's important to have those, to really get down to the heart of a person and really get to know them.
Yeah, it is really. It's the love that you have for each other, and to let you know what your feelings are, and the things that you've never talked about. Because just like what I said earlier, it's God's timing of the situations that come up, and the conversations that we've had. It was the right time for him to tell me the things that he told me. So it was amazing. I just got to give love to God and love to my dad.
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of the things with the revelations that he was getting, and this was just one piece of it.
Yeah.
Those things he really didn't talk about much.
He never talked about that he was a seer, and God showed him things, and they came to real. that came to life, you know, the things that God just showed him. I mean, he was a seer. I mean, it's just, I didn't know that. So there's a lot of things that I did learn in the past 4 weeks that I haven't known the past 35 years or 40 years. So
yeah. Yeah, and a lot of times that's what I think happens. Again, we just get lost in the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, we do.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Sure do. So, family, our time is up. We hope that you enjoyed today's segment. Blessings to you and your family. Donna and I will look forward to seeing you next week. And remember, keep it real. Thank you.